What's up guys, Mickle here, and is Brad Garlinghouse trying to indicate to us that the Ripple SEC case is already over? In this video, I want to show you some very interesting tweets that Brad Garlinghouse just started liking. Now there was a lot of controversy about these tweets over the weekend, whether or not they were even real. In this video, I want to show you some more evidence behind that because this is starting to get extremely interesting. We also saw the SEC take another big loss today. In this video, I want to break down what just happened with the SEC because they are starting to lose cases on all fronts. I want to show you that it looks like more than ever, the SEC will never be able to declare XRP per se a security. Guys, this is absolutely massive, and I have a feeling this case has been over for XRP holders for a very long time now. Like always guys, your support means so much to this channel. Make sure to take a quick second to like this video and subscribe to my channel. It's really going to help me out so much. Also, if you ever need a good place to buy some XRP or the Flare token, make sure to check out my favorite exchange Uphold down in the description of this video. With that said though, let's jump right into it, and I hope you guys enjoy the content. So I want to start this video out and talk about another big loss that the SEC just took, because at the start of this year, Gary Gensler and the SEC filed a bunch of lawsuits against random cryptocurrency companies, alleging that some of the crypto tokens on those platforms were unregistered securities. Now the reason the SEC was doing this was essentially they didn't want to end up in another case like Ripple. Ripple had a ton of money and they were able to fight the SEC tooth and nail and say XRP is not a security, and right now it looks like Ripple's going to win that case. Well, the SEC didn't want to end up in another one of these situations, so instead the SEC started suing players like Coinbase, saying, oh, by the way, Coinbase, on top of this other thing we're suing you for, these 10 crypto tokens are also securities. They know that Coinbase isn't going to fight as hard to say these tokens are not securities, because at the end of the day, Coinbase has bigger worries on their hand. Well, a couple months ago, the SEC actually filed a lawsuit against a former Coinbase employee, saying that that former Coinbase employee was trading illegal securities. So in this case, the SEC tried to cut Coinbase out of the equation and just went after an employee to try to pin the charges on him, and the hope was this poor guy could never actually fight the charges that these coins were not securities, so it would essentially be a way of using backdoor regulation to try to make these crypto token securities without actually having to go against someone who could defend the case. Now, just to add a little more information to this Coinbase employee was actually insider trading, which obviously isn't allowed, but whether or not the token itself was declared a security or not obviously had nothing to do with the insider trading. The SEC was just tacking that on to try to get a declaration by the courts that a crypto token was a security. Now, what is so interesting about this, and this was actually tweeted out by Rodrigo, the SEC just entered a proposed settlement in their case against the Coinbase employee, which is a complete surrender and shows the weakness in the SEC's theories about the secondary market trading of crypto. This is a meaningful development for the industry. So what is going on here? Well, the SEC actually decided to settle their case against this Coinbase employee rather than taking him to court. This is extremely interesting because we know settlements do not really create precedent. The SEC cannot go after other cryptocurrency tokens and say, oh, look at this settlement we just had. This means that your token is now a security. If the SEC was actually determined to get a court ruling that the secondary sales of these tokens were securities in this case, they would have forced this former Coinbase employee to go the distance, because they could have got a ruling in the case that the tokens were securities. They wouldn't have to fight against a lot of money, because obviously this Coinbase employee is not going to have money like Ripple or Coinbase the company. So essentially what the SEC did here was they backed out of what looked like actually a pretty easy win. Now, this is extremely interesting because if the SEC had any confidence that their legal theory that the secondary sales of a token were also securities, this would have been an easy case for them to bring and possibly get a win. But what we are seeing is that the SEC's confidence that they can actually win on these issues is really falling off. We saw at the start of the year, the SEC took LBRY to court, and the court found that LBRY sales of the LBC token constituted securities. But something very interesting happened when John Deaton got involved and actually pushed the judge a little bit on this issue. The judge ultimately pretty much agreed that the LBC token is not a security, and now we're just hoping he puts this in a court order. What happened though, which was so interesting, is at the end of the day, the judge in the library case was a big cryptocurrency skeptic and essentially agreed with the SEC down the aisle. But not even he could wrap his head around the absurd idea that the token itself, the LBC token, is the security. What we're seeing now in the Ripple SEC case is the SEC is having the same issue. All indications are that XRP is not a security, regardless if Ripple had some sales of XRP in the past that maybe constituted securities transactions. But what we're learning is it doesn't look like there's any scenario in which the digital asset itself is the security. And this is a massive win for crypto, and I wouldn't be surprised if the SEC, based on what we're seeing right here, is starting to realize that. Since the 76 years since a Howey test was invented, there has never been a single occurrence in which the asset itself was a security. The SEC is trying to create new law in these cryptocurrency cases, and to this point they have completely failed. I would not be surprised in the slightest if the SEC is being forced to abandon this tactic, because at the end of the day it's getting them into big trouble. The SEC could have easily won this case against Ripple if they didn't allege that XRP itself was per se a security. The SEC is getting themselves into deep trouble with these far overbroad claims, claiming that things that have never happened before in history, like assets themselves being securities, is actually causing them to lose cases. And I think what we're going to start to see, especially after the SEC gets demolished in the Ripple SEC case, I think the SEC is really going to be forced to walk back their strategy. And guys, I think it's only a matter of time. I think Ripple's really going to open the floodgates for this. Let's just see how that one ends. But we are getting some very interesting indications from Brad Garlinghouse that this case might already be over. Now, over the weekend, and I didn't initially cover this because I didn't know if it was true or not, Brad Garlinghouse actually liked a tweet by Digital Asset Investor where he was responding to another tweet where Digital Asset Investor says, "Dimes to donuts, this thing is over." And what it was a tweet from Medico where NASDAQ was actually giving Ripple a congratulations for their acquisition of Medico. Now, I want to talk a little more about that acquisition later and why it's getting so much attention, but I want to start off with just a fact that Brad Garlinghouse is actually liking this tweet. Now, in my opinion, the only thing that this could actually indicate if Brad Garlinghouse was trying to signal something is that there would be a settlement. And the reason I think that is because I understand that Brad Garlinghouse is extremely confident in their chances of winning this case, and I'm confident in their chances of winning this case as well. But at the end of the day, he's a CEO. He has to be really conservative. So to think that this thing is over before there's even a summary judgment ruling, I think that's just jumping the gun a little bit. My inclination is that if Brad Garlinghouse was actually trying to indicate something by liking this tweet, it is that they have reached a settlement with the SEC. Now, since this case has started, I have always thought this case was going to end in a settlement. I'm sure you guys have heard me say it a million times, so I'm not going to break it down again, but ultimately it is the best thing for both sides. And just to quickly clarify, I know a lot of people are going to say, I don't want Ripple to settle, I want them to beat the SEC outright. Guys, ultimately, a settlement where XRP gets clarity is actually better than Ripple winning outright because one, there will never be a question about whether or not Judge Torres specifically mentions in her summary judgment ruling the status of XRP, and two, the SEC would never be able to appeal the decision. It would be over, XRP wouldn't be a security, and it would be a done deal for history. I actually think a settlement would be better, but it doesn't mean we can't get a big win with a summary judgment decision either. Ultimately, I find it very interesting that Brad Garlinghouse was liking this tweet, and we actually got some confirmation too that Ripple also liked this tweet, so I'm really starting to think this congratulations by NASDAQ was real, it actually happened, and there's no Photoshop going on here. Now, with all that said, you're probably seeing Medico come up a lot recently, and I quickly want to talk about why it was such an important acquisition, because a lot of people are just looking at it as some custody company, but I actually think Medico is a lot more than just that. Crypto Eerie tweeted out earlier today, over 3/4 of the global financial institutions are interested in using DeFi to meet business needs. Now, this is extremely interesting because you would assume a lot of the big institutions out there would be scared of DeFi. No, they want to get involved with DeFi, they just want to be able to do it in a regulatory compliant manner. What we know is XRP might be about to be the first digital asset on the market with certain clarity. This could completely flip the landscape for where DeFi is built. Right now, Ethereum dominates DeFi, but what we're learning is that Ethereum really doesn't have as much clarity as many people thought it did. We also know that Ethereum has kind of failed to create scalable DeFi because of the crazy gas fees and ultimately just much larger problems with the chain. If XRP can get the clarity from this court case that it needs for institutions to adopt it, we could see Ripple doing some massive things in terms of using Medico on the back end to custody assets to help onboard their customers into a DeFi market built on the XRP ledger. This could be an absolute game changer for the cryptocurrency market, and rather having Ethereum being the king of DeFi, we could see Ethereum as the king of retail DeFi, but we could see the XRP ledger as the king of institutional DeFi, which is a market that is order of magnitudes larger. I just want to finish this off and show you an Andrezel tweet. He said Ripple owning almost half the total supply of XRP, owning custody with Medico, owning parts of different exchanges, and owning a large scale in Tranglo, a payments company, and their own proprietary payment network. They are invested in all parts of the cross-border transaction. And guys, I think it's even more than that. I think Ripple is going to be in a place very soon where when the next generation financial system is being built on the internet, they are going to be the BlackRock of that system. They are going to be the most important company in digital assets, full stop, and they are going to have their tentacles in every single part of the chain. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for coming. I hope you enjoyed this update. If you did, make sure to like and subscribe. It really does mean so much. And for now, Mickle out.